Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
All right, let's do this. What's going on, Lock Shoppers and Cool Betters? Huss here with the boys, the three-man weave today. Patty Gregoire, Jake Bolin, Moss, as we lock in for NFL kickoff next week. We've got lots to get to. I'm going to hit the CFL lines. Bomber Rider line is out. We'll get to that right off the top. A little bit of prop talk involving a couple interesting wide receiver rooms, a couple other futures to get to, and a bit of a week one look ahead with the lines out and all of us just counting down the hours until next Thursday night when the Chiefs raise another banner and we kick it off with Kansas City and Baltimore at Arrowhead. And there's a lot of awesome baseball going on right now. We'll put together a little triple play with the fellas at the end of the show. Patty Gregoire, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Doing great, Huss. You just got me all sorts of fired up to not just talk NFL football, but we get to watch NFL football in just over a week. I can't wait. I know we had preseason. It's just not the same. It is absolutely not the same. I'm a little more fired up, though, because as Jake knows, as you know, I'm a big college football fan. And I know we had week 0 last week. It was a nice little appetizer, but it didn't feed.
Georgia Tech.
That was a great bet, by the way, Huss. Great bet. Georgia Tech covers and wins outright.
Yeah.
I'm pumped for week 1. Schedule is absolutely loaded with a lot of great games, but we got some housekeeping to do. I was looking at my notes. I think I've already given out 5 or 6 futures bets. I've got another 3 to hand out today. Like, my account is luckily for these, I think it's because the golf has been going so well, Huss, that I've had some extra coin in my pocket to make some of these futures bets. Normally I'm like 2 to 3, maybe 4, but I'm unloading the clip this year.
Hey, you know what? It's always so much fun to get a few in, and whether you're in on particular games or not, you got particular guys you like, you're riding with or fading throughout the year, and obviously we've got some time before next week's kickoff to kind of lock in all of our finals. You know, Jake, I was in a draft last night with some of the guys from the Jets office and some other friends, and it was like the Monday night, and I come back home last night. I just realized, it was like 40 degrees here on the weekend. It was like tropical. It's cooled down a little bit. It's in the early 20s, and I'm like, okay, this might be my favorite couple weeks of the year. We've got basically a fantasy draft or something involving the NFL or betting or pools almost every night this week. We get to Saturday. You guys will be locked in on the college football. We'll be heading to Regina for the Labor Day Classic, which is the most fun weekend of the year in the Canadian Football League. Come back, another draft, and boom, Thursday night, we are at it. And for you, Jake, as Pat just mentioned, I mean, while you might not be heading out for the Labor Day weekend for a CFL game, a big slate of college football to get right into it after just a taste on the weekend.
Yeah, I tried to get a piece of it with SMU, and it didn't go as well as I'd hoped, but it's happy to see you pick up a win in that week 0 slate. I said to Pat, college football week 0 is like my preseason. I don't even know what I'm getting myself into just yet. But it's an exciting time. We made it, boys. Like, we got through the dog days, and it's finally here. Like, it's football season. Whether the weather says it, whether the schedule says it, my girlfriend's saying no, it's not. Guess what? Yes, it is. I'm ready to go. I do have a wedding on Saturday, though, so I don't know how I'm going to be constantly checking the score app.
When was the last weekend? When was the last weekend that you didn't have a wedding?
Last weekend. I moved out of Toronto. I'm now back home. So last weekend I moved out. I'm back home, and then this weekend's another wedding, and then it's just NFL football the rest of the way.
Well, exactly. I mean, I've told this story on WST before, but like as a kid, and I don't really have much anxiety. The final 2 weeks of August, it was like crippling. I can't believe we have to go back to school. Oh my God, another 8-9 months. It's the exact opposite now as an adult. It's like, hey, summer's been great. Let's get to NFL season, Labor Day weekend. Let's have some fun. And then it is on. And of course, we've got excitement in all the hockey markets about getting guys back to training camp. NHL futures are up right now. Well, listen, just before we dive into our NFL topics, let me quickly get to the Canadian Football League, because yesterday we did not have a line in the Bomber Rider game. It is out right now. There's actually been a little movement as well in one of the games. The Touchdown Pacific game, which Dusty will be calling in Victoria, coming up on Saturday. Ottawa at BC. BC was 3.5-point favorites yesterday. It's now down to 3. Sooner or later, people will start respecting the Ottawa Red Blacks. If you've just been betting Ottawa every year against the spread or money line, you've done very, very well. They have been the darlings of bettors this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're plus 138 on the money line, BC minus 169. The game we here on the prairies have been waiting for is here. Bombers at Riders. And it's funny, Dusty and I were kicking around. He might have said 2.5. I thought it would be Riders minus 3. It's Riders minus 2.5. So the Riders, a very slight favorite, which I guess implies the Bombers on a neutral field would be the slightest of favorites. But there will be a significant home field advantage for the Green and Mosaic. Saskatchewan minus 2.5. Saskatchewan is minus 143 on the money line. If you like the Bombers, you can get them at plus 2.5. Or if you want to bet them outright to win, plus 118. Real low total on that game as well, 47.5. Not surprising when you consider these teams combined for 28 points in their earlier game this season in Mosaic. And both defenses have been playing very, very well. Some questions more about the offense, although less so in Saskatchewan. Trevor Harris has been good, although didn't really follow up that great game against Montreal where he deserved to win with a classic last week in Toronto. The other games, Argos are 5-point favorites in Hamilton against the Ticats, and then Edmonton and Calgary finishing it off. Dusty will have that game as well. Calgary minus 2.5 for that game. So again, like we've seen all season long, really tight lines in the CFL. 3 of the 4 games, 3 points or less. And even the Argos at Ticats, that's one of those games that you can throw the records out every single Labor Day, much like Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. As bad as Hamilton's looked at times, I have a feeling they'll bring their best for that game. Matt Awanek and I will dive into all of these and get picks locked in for the weekend in the Canadian Football League on Thursday's show. But it's all up in Coolbet right now. And don't forget, every week you've got 20% win boost to top up one of your CFL bets, whether you want to make it a parlay, a total, whichever it is. You know how it works. Just get to Coolbet and pick it as per whatever you're feeling. All right, NFL guys, and just before we get to a couple of your favorite picks, I wanted to ask you, both of you, about some receiving props. And the big news yesterday, we'll start with you, was CeeDee Lamb getting his contract. He got the bag, $136 million, I think, for 4 years, a huge deal for the star receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. So now they can worry about Micah Parsons and Zach Prescott at some point, but they've got CeeDee Lamb there. His receiving total is big, 1,350 yards and a half over under. But he's going to be playing week 1. I know we missed some at training camp. Whether that will matter, I guess we'll see. But are you high on CeeDee Lamb right now? I do have a little concern that I'm not sure if Cooks is still there. Like, he's such a focal part of that offense. He's definitely going to be getting the attention. Can he break through that and still hit this over and be arguably the top fantasy receiver this year, considering the way the Cowboys are set up? What do you think?
Well, when you look at it from a betting perspective, I just at that number, I have no idea how you can bet the over, because even if he does end up shy of that number, he could still have a really strong year. I would look maybe more towards like his touchdown totals if you do want to get a piece of Lamb. I think for me, when you look at is he wide receiver number one, I think JJ, Justin Jefferson, and despite Sam Darnold being the quarterback in Minnesota, I still think he's wide receiver number one from a fantasy perspective. But when it comes to Lamb, you are right. He's going to garner a lot of attention. I think he still has a big year. I don't think him getting paid is going to change any of that. But that's a lot. And you mentioned the cap gymnastics that they're now going to have to do. It was $136 million. Like, how are they able to fit Parsons into this equation? I have no idea. You had to get it done. I know I said JJ's wide receiver number one. CD Lamb's not too far behind, whether he's 2 or 3. He's a special talent. I think he's going to have a big year. Just looking at that number, it's scary. Sure, he could sail over it. He could get over it, but it's just way too big of a number to wager for me.
You know what? CD Lamb, if you go to the regular season most receiving yards, he's the co-favorite with Tyreek Hill to lead the NFL in receiving at plus 650. I don't think there's any doubt, Jake, that he's going to be getting a ton of balls thrown his way. I do wonder if the guy's going to be double covered on every single play this season and able to get to that level. Just your thoughts on maybe Dallas overall, but in particular, CD Lamb from a betting perspective? Is this a guy that you're going to fade the big number, or do you think that he could continue what he did last year and potentially hit that plus 650 and lead the whole league in yards?
Listen, I'm a fan of CD Lamb. I think he's a great player, but like Pat mentioned, like the number is just so big. Like one little thing goes wrong and you're sweating that out. Like if he gets injured and he's out a couple weeks, like that thing's probably in the toilet. So I don't know if I can sit there and buy in a number like that so big. But like I said, I am high on him. I think the Cowboys will be in the mix. I think that division is very much open. I'm not high on the Eagles. The Commanders got a rookie quarterback. And the Giants, well, they didn't score a touchdown in preseason. So I think in terms of the division, it's wide open for the Cowboys. I think they'll have strong defense once again, and I think that offense will hold its own. I'm interested to see what happens at the running back position. I think a lot of fantasy drafters are high on this Rico Dowdle. Ezekiel Elliott's back, but I don't really know how much he's got left to give. And you mentioned, like, CD's going to get a ton of targets. He is the bona fide number one on that Dallas Cowboys team. Brandon Cooks, if he can stay healthy, is their number 2. And I think they're number 3 right now. Just looking at the depth chart, Jalen Tolbert is listed as their number 3. So, that'll be an interesting trio there. And then they also got Jake Ferguson, who I thought actually had a strong year last year for Dallas. So, we'll have to see. I'm not buying in on the number that big, but I do think CD will get his this year.
Yeah, I famously faded CD fantasy-wise last year, and, we know the season he had. I'm still with you, though. I think I'm leaning on the under on this one. I think just even if he plays all the 17 games, the amount of attention that's going to go his way, it's going to be tough to do it week in and week out with the level of corners and the extra help that they're going to be getting on him. I do think they're going to force Dak Prescott to try to beat them other ways. And they don't have the running threat, in my opinion, that they've had in the past. Pat, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to quickly, you mentioned Ferguson, Jake, and I don't believe we have like a season total for yards or even for touchdowns, but I think he's a guy that if you want to fade, if you're scared of fading CD or you don't want that long season commitment, maybe necessarily this isn't a fade, but it's more of finding value elsewhere with the Cowboys. I think Ferguson's going to be a really big tight end target for them in the end zone. I think a red zone opportunities are going to come his way. He finished last year, I think, with only 5 touchdowns, but in the postseason, he was huge. He had 3 touchdowns. And so for me, when you look at this Cowboys team, I know everyone loves to poke fun at them. They're the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL. At the end of the day, I think they're going to score a lot of points. I think their defense is going to be really good. They're going to be a team that come playoff time, they're going to be there. Are they going to be able to win games in the postseason? Probably not, but I don't know. I feel like there are some ways that you can not necessarily fade CD, but find opportunity elsewhere, Huss, because I do agree with you. I think they're going to jam them up. I think they're going to try to double them as much as possible. So there's going to be some holes open elsewhere when it comes to the Cowboys.
Well, and to boost Pat's point, sorry, Huss. I'm just looking at here. I just pulled it up. In the red zone last year, he was the most targeted tight end in the red zone across the entire NFL. 24 targets in the red zone last year. So that 5 number could be doubled, depending on how much attention CD is getting this season.
Well, I count on it being a lot. I can tell you that. Now, I want to go to the NFC North for the minute. And, when you look at, listen, I think I've talked about this before. My favorite division play in the NFL this year, based on the number, is the Packers at plus 190 to win the NFC North. I mean, I'm here for the arguments that Detroit's still the best team. I think Chicago's going to be a lot better at plus 315. I don't think the Vikings will be there, but they could be better than people expect. They're 11-1. But I love that plus 190 on the Green Bay Packers to win the division. But you're diving into it. I mean, Jordan Love had that breakout season, especially the second half, brilliant playoff performance on, I believe they were the youngest team in the NFL. So, I mean, it really does seem like the Packers are going up. And obviously the Bears, it is night and day. Just comparing the two quarterbacks, Caleb Williams' season total for passing yardage is 3,400 at Coolbet. Here is receivers. DJ Moore is 1,000. Keenan Allen is 850, and Rome Odunze, the 9th overall pick in the draft, is 675 on a 3,400 passing number for Caleb Williams. If you look at the Packers, Jordan Love is 3,900 is his total. The only two Packer receivers that are listed on the receiving props are Christian Watson and Jaden Reed at 750. And, I kind of got the idea to have this conversation leaning in from a fantasy convo where the Packer receivers, none of them are really being drafted in the top 80. Where you're looking at the Chicago receivers and they're going like DJ Moore is very high, Keenan Allen's high, and I think people are really high on them. Like often with the props, I'll take some unders. If a guy gets hurt, you've got a big advantage on that. But I have to think, being as high as I am on Jordan Love overall, I like him to potentially be the MVP this year, getting some new blood in there. I think he's 14-1 right now. The Watson, again, he's got to play, and he has had a lot of injuries in the past, but it looks like he'll be going in week 1. Watson and Reed over 750 seem like great bets because, I know Love can mix it around and throw to a bunch of different guys, but those sort of are their guys. Romeo Doubs is going to get in the mix as well. But, people are catching these passes, and they're going to do a lot of it this year. When you look at the Chicago, I think you really have to pick one or the other. And I think DJ Moore is the safest, Pat. But I'll be honest, I'm a lot higher on the Rome Odunze number at 675 than I am on Keenan Allen for a couple reasons. First of all, it sounded like he was carrying a few extra pounds coming into camp. He has never been, I shouldn't say he's played a lot of games, but he's never seemingly been healthy. And with Caleb and Rome coming in together, they've been working out all season long. I think that the rookie, if he shows well early, he'll be in that position to see a ton of balls. And I think Keenan Allen might be the guy that is sort of the odd guy out. How do you see, listen, of the Packer receivers and the Bear receivers, is there any number there that speaks I'm on an over or I'm on an under? Because I think they're very different receiving rooms with two quarterbacks that are expected to do big things.
I think it's got to be Rome. I really do. And I agree. I was looking earlier today, and Mike Clay from ESPN actually has him down for 60 passes for 804 yards and 6 touchdowns. Slightly behind Moore. who he has at just over 1,000, and then Keenan Allen at 883. So obviously, if you think Williams is going to light it up, there's going to have to be one of those receivers over 1,000 yards. That's going to be DJ Moore. He was electric last year with Justin Fields. I think you know what you're getting with Keenan Allen. He's been consistent. It's just if Williams is to take that next step, there's got to be that third guy. And I certainly believe it can be him. He was electrifying at Washington. It sounds like you said has built a lot of chemistry, with Williams during camp. And we've seen it before. A guy maybe comes in at wide receiver 3. That doesn't mean he can't jump other guys in the depth chart. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. Allen's a veteran. He understands. He's at a point where, he's probably okay with taking a step back to allow a young receiver to come in and make a name for himself. And to be quite honest, it's almost like it's going to be wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2A and wide receiver 2B.
Yeah, and one guy has room to really, I think, ascend, and the other guy might go down, and we'll see when that happens. What about the pack for you, Jake? I mean, would you feel comfortable hitting overs on Watson and Reed at 750, considering what we expect from Jordan Love this year?
Honestly, I'm high on Jaden Reed. I was just going through it here as you guys were chatting, and he was really solid last year. He had 94 targets, only made 64 receptions, but got a lot of his targets later in the season. I think he got a little bit more trust from his quarterback in his first season. He played 16 games. You look at Watson, I just don't trust that he's going to stay healthy all season. And that's the only concern I have with that number. He's just not a guy that I see playing a full slate really any year. I think he'll be awesome when he's out there. Mm-hmm. He's an awesome deep threat. We always see those big plays down the field to a guy like Christian Watson. I just don't know if he's reliable enough to last an entire season. So I think if I had to pick one or the other, it's going to be Jaden Reed for me. Like I said, 94 targets last season. I think he could be over 100 target guy. And I mean, if he's anywhere in that 70 reception range, I think he can do it. He was almost an 800-yard receiver last year on 64 receptions, 793 yards on 64 receptions. He played 16 games. So as long as he stays healthy, I think Jaden Reed has no problem going over that 750 and a half.
I know you guys have a couple futures that you want to throw out. I mean, I've been really focusing in on some of these numbers and trying to find angles, just based on where the quarterback numbers are with what the receivers are listed. And I found this really interesting. I'm definitely going to hit the Reed. I think I might take a flyer on the Watson as well. But as I say, Packers plus 190 to win that division, I think is great value right now. And I'm buying Jordan. I'm buying Jordan Love as well as a guy that could potentially be, right there in the MVP voting. And if you look at the MVP, it's Mahomes at 550, it's Josh Allen, it's CJ Stroud 9-1, Burrow 10, and then Jordan Love at 14-1. One other prop, and then I'll get a couple from you guys each before we look at the Week 1 lines. This is another rookie that is so intriguing to me, and I think he's going to be a guy that is hugely valuable to fantasy players that pick him, is Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels. And Daniels is going to play right out of the gate in Week 1. I don't think this team is going to challenge for a playoff spot in the first year. It is going to be about developing him, giving him a chance to make mistakes, but also to do what he does best, get comfortable in an NFL offense and kind of grow with the young players that they've added in. His rush total for the year is 525 yards. He might walk into the NFL in Week 1 and be the number 2 rushing quarterback in the entire NFL behind Lamar Jackson the day he steps on the field. If he's playing 17 games, and again, these are big ifs, I would imagine that he'll eclipse that comfortably. Because as we've seen in his college career, this is a guy with blazing speed, incredible confidence in running the football, and that ability to be mobile is going to, well, first of all, it's part of his game to buy himself time to find receivers, But as we've seen, I mean, that dual threat quarterback can be so dangerous. And that is, I think, what Cliff Kingsbury's building that Washington Commanders offense around now that he's the OC. I think Daniels is he'll eat for you in fantasy. As long as the passing numbers are there, I think the rushing numbers are going to be consistent. And 525, I'll make a prediction right now. When we get to this point next year, this rushing number is probably 675 or closer to 700, because I think he goes routinely for 40, 50 yards a game consistently throughout. So I'm loving that Jaden Daniels rushing number right now. We'll see what he does in the passing game. But as I say, also a guy, if you've got a good quarterback, especially if you're in any sort of a keeper league where you can take guys later and then keep them at a better value, we might be talking about Jaden Daniels as a top 5 fantasy quarterback next year based on what he can do passing, but mostly on the ground. And I'm going to try and buy in on his ground game before he even plays a game in the NFL. So give me the Jaden Daniels rush. Patty, what else have you been cooking up this week with all your golf riches?
Well, I think I will be adding that Daniels rushing prop. Last year at LSU, that Heisman season, he had 10 rushing touchdowns and over 1,000 rushing yards. And one of my favorite bets last year was betting whoever the Washington Commanders were playing, their over sack number. That's just what I was doing because that offensive line is terrible. The only difference is the quarterback that they have this year is going to be able to escape, going to be able to use his legs. There will be designed runs. So I totally agree. I think that's a great play. I 1,000% love that bet. And let's be honest, too, if you're looking at any other Daniels opportunities, whether it's rookie of the year, his passing numbers, I think they're going to be losing a lot of games. So he's going to have to be a playmaker. He's going to have to throw the ball, but he's also going to have to use his legs. So I think that Daniel's probably not going to win a lot of games this year. That's why I'm reluctant to bet him as the rookie of the year. But I think you can make some money off Daniels as the season progresses before the season with futures, but then also betting some of his overs, touchdown, anytime touchdown props, things of that nature. So I'm going to get into this. That's added to my card, Huss. But one that I had before was T. Higgins, over 850.5 receiving yards. And I understand there was the contract drama. I understand that Jamar Chase might be coming back once his contract's figured out. But last year, I really feel was an anomaly for Higgins. It was the worst statistic season of his career. You know, he was banged up in and out of the lineup, missed, only played 12 games, only had 656 yards, 76 targets. It was a really, really down year for him. But I mentioned he was injured. He also had a banged up Joe Burrow throwing the ball or Jake Browning throwing the ball. In the previous 3 seasons, Higgins passed this number pretty easily. 2022, 1,029 yards. 2021, 1,091 yards. 2020, 908 yards. I think Higgins can get back to being that 1,000-yard receiving or 1,000-yard receiver. Even if Jamar Chase comes, he signs his contract. He was at practice earlier, I think, this week. So even if he does come back, I think there is still an opportunity where if Burrow is healthy, you could have 2 plus 1,000-yard receivers. So I'm on him, and he doesn't even have to go over 1,000. He's just got to go over 850. I don't understand this number. I get it. He was really bad last year, but he was injured. The contract's figured out. Also, he's franchise tagged. He is franchise tagged. So yes, there is a possibility he might sit out if he's a little bit banged up. But because he's franchise tagged, it's another contract year for him. He can go out and show what he's got. I don't think he can afford to have a lackadaisical season. I think he's got to light it up. So there's a lot of motivation for him.
Joe Burrow's going to feed him too. I mean, let's face it. You talk about anything to do with the Bengals receiver from last year, it all starts with Joe Burrow being hurt and missing the games that he did right now. And Jake Browning was fine, but Joe Burrow is in that top tier of elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And I'm sort of with you. And you know what? It's funny. People are hesitant. You see T. Higgins sort of falling. He's not like the sexiest name. He's not the number one receiver on your team, but in doing fantasy drafts, he's just sort of sitting there waiting for you to take him. And you just kind of laid it out. He's as consistent as they come. And of course, he's playing in a comeback year. Jake, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, the last time we jumped on here and did some NFL futures, I had a few more that I didn't get to. So I'm going to start with Laporta, over 7.5 touchdowns scored this season. It's even money right now, which I thought was interesting. He had 15 red zone targets a season ago, which was 4th among all tight ends. He had 7 red zone touchdowns in 2023 and 10 total touchdowns. So obviously he broke a few as well. So I think this is just one of those guys that Jared Goff is really going to rely on when they do get down in the red zone. Obviously they have a strong run game in Detroit. That's a big piece of it. But I think when it comes to a little bit of play action, getting someone open, a guy that you can rely on with good hands and a big body, I think he's gonna remind you of like a young Gronk. I know that's probably a little bit of a stretch, but I think Sam Laporta is going to be a reliable guy in the red zone for Jared Goff. And when they need something to happen, that's the guy they're going to head to. So I thought even money was a nice little number there for Laporta. Over 7.5 touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in double digits once again.
Laporta, he's so good. My only concern about Laporta is that there's so many other mouths to feed in Detroit. You got Gibbs, you got Montgomery, you've got Jameson Williams, of course, Allen Ross, St. Brown, but the numbers spoke for themselves. I mean, he was the guy, was the reason why they were comfortable trading TJ Hawkinson to the to the Vikings and moving on from there. One more for me, and we've talked about these receiving rooms. The Houston Texans have one of the most interesting in that they've brought in Stephon Diggs. You already had Tank Dell there, but to me, Nico Collins is the alpha in that room. I'm not at all concerned about Diggs being there and kind of chipping away at what he gets. If anything, I think Diggs is going to have to, for the first time in his career, accept the fact that he's not the number one guy and play within the system. But I think they've got amazing coaching there. And it always goes well for Diggs for a while until he gets disgruntled. And I think Houston, where they're at right now, is on the upswing. Mark me down for Nico Collins putting 1,000-yard season in the books. His total is 1,000.5. The connection between Stroud and Collins last year was a revelation, I think, for most people. And if you jumped on him early in fantasy, he was your guy. Joe Mixon's coming in. We'll see what they get out of him. To me, CJ Stroud is going to sling it. And I think Nico Collins is going to be the guy. And to be honest, they're not going to be able to focus on Collins as much as you might normally do because of those other guys in. So as much as I usually will hit some of the unders on these total props, I love Nico Collins this year, jumping on him in fantasy. And I look for him to put up 1,000-yard season and hit the over. Pat, you got another one for us?
I got another couple. I'll hit one quick. I'll hit one here, and then the two others will be a little bit of a quicker hitter. This is a little bit of a long shot, though, and I might be coming into Jake's yard here a little bit. I don't know if he's going to like me riding with the Colts here, or if I'm getting too close to home. But Shane Steichen, 50. I love it. Absolutely love it. Shane Steichen, Coach of the Year, 15-1. I was kind of surprised to see this number that high, to be quite honest. Last year, I think he was even in the conversation and got some votes for this award because of what he was able to do with his Colt team. He had 9 wins last year, didn't have Anthony Richardson for 13 of them. He took this offense from the 30th overall offense in 2022 to tied for 10th. They somehow managed to score 23.3 points per game. It was remarkable what Steichen was able to do. And now he has an opportunity to hopefully work with Richardson for a full year. And he is the same offensive coordinator that really helped Jalen Hurts develop into a passing quarterback. Look to see what happened from year 1 to year 2 with Hurts. I think there's an opportunity that we said the same thing here with Steichen. And let's not forget, Jonathan Taylor is back and healthy on a new contract extension. No distractions there. So, Jake, sing it with me, brother. This is our Colts. This is our team. We love them. I'm riding with Steichen, 15-1 to win Coach of the Year. I had to get a piece of the Colts, and this is a way to do it. So another one, as sound and as smart as that one sounded, I'm going to probably dumb myself a little bit here. But Sam Darnold, over 3,450.5 yards. I'm a sick puppy. What can I say? When I looked at that number, I said, it is way too low. I know it's Sam Darnold, but look at the weapons he has. He has the best wide receiver in the game. And one thing with Darnold, he's going to just absolutely make it rain. He's also going to throw some incredibly dumb passes. It's just that's what's going to happen. There's going to be some picks. Think that 30-30 season, Jameis Winston. Think of the same thing. There's going to be some plays where your jaw's on the floor because it's such a beautiful pass, but then it's also going to be on the floor because you're going to wonder, why were you throwing that ball? I really don't know which way the Vikings go this year, if they make the playoffs, if they're going to be a bottom feeder. One thing I do know is that J.J. McCarthy's not there anymore. He's hurt for this year, I should say. He is still the quarterback of the future. They don't need to see what else there is. What they could do is help Sam Darnold see what they have. Maybe he becomes an asset and they can trade him at some point next year. They can move on from him. Or maybe he's the guy and you allow J.J. McCarthy to kind of learn under him for a couple of years. We've seen these reclamation projects before. Look at what Geno Smith was able to do to revitalize his career. Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer, man.
Well, listen, and just on that note, Pat, KOC they signed Sam Darnold on day 1 of free agency.
Yes.
Like, O'Connell believes that this is a guy that they can win football games with. And to your point, with JJ on the mend for the entire season, this is a year for Sam Darnold to go out, take advantage of a glorious opportunity to revitalize his career, get a new contract, probably somewhere else, but take advantage of throwing at Justin Jefferson all year long. I think that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, and just, when looking at this opportunity, you're right. It is a huge opportunity for him, and whether he runs with it or not, I don't know. But I just looked at this number, and I thought it was way, way too low for a guy that has proven in the past he can air it out. He's got the best target in the entire NFL. The other one that I like as well, again, I'll be quick on this one. Jared Goff to lead the NFL in passing yards. You guys already talked about just all the targets that they have. I think this offense could get even better than it was last year. He's passed for at least 4,400 yards in 4 of the last 6 seasons. The only 2 exceptions for that was his last year in LA and then his first year in Detroit. So since then he's been, on fire. He finished with, 4,500 yards last year. That was second in the league. I said it. I think he could take a step up. Tua led the league in passing yards last year. I think Tua takes a step back. I think Goff comes up. Obviously, Mahomes is poised to have another big year. But just at the number, I really, really like the number at plus 800 when you consider Prescott, Stroud, and Mahomes are a little bit lower. I think he's going to be right there.
Jakey, squeeze one more in, and then we'll hit this triple play.
Yeah, it's funny, Huss. You started getting into yours, and I thought you were going to steal mine. I actually have an underplay, and this is mainly to stand in solidarity with Patty. Give me Diggs under yards this season. Right now, I believe it's 900.5. We talked a little bit about it. Like there's only one ball and there's a ton of mouths to feed over in Houston. I think Collins is the bona fide number 1 there, even though Diggs has come in, and I believe on the depth chart last time I checked, he was listed number 1. I'm not buying it. Tank Dell obviously was a big piece last year. If he can stay healthy, Dalton Schultz, and then also Mixon as well. So I think there's a lot of mouths to feed, and it's crazy to me. Diggs puts up this big fuss about not getting the football enough, and he ends up in Houston, where he might get to football even less than he was getting in Buffalo. So I'm gonna fade Diggs, and I'm backing you with Collins. He was on my fantasy team, like my favorite fantasy team last year, and I really loved his game. So give me Diggs under. But listen, Patty, I wanted to go back to your Darnold thing. I did make a comment about it. Listen, he's going to have some good pieces to throw to outside of Jefferson as well. Hawkinson's still there, and Addison's not supposed to miss extended time either. So you get a healthy receiver core there with a good tight end. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I don't know if I'm going to be backing it, but it's Sam Darnold. And really, you look at the quarterback depth. Like, are you going to bench Sam Darnold for Nick Mullins? Probably not.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
but look what Nick Mullins was able. Look what Nick Mullins was able to do last year. Like, he actually looked half decent at points last year when he took over when Cousins got injured. I totally agree. I mean, this is not the end all, but like when you look at some of these fantasy pundits and what some people have him projected like 4,500 yards. Like, that is a full 1,000 yards short of what this number is. So, again, I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater. He's going to win comeback player of the year. I just think that the number that they've posted is just far too low for this quarterback with the weapons that he has.
We were going to get into next week's lines, but we'll have to do that a little bit maybe on Friday, and then obviously next week will be all about it. But it's all up there if you want to get into it. It starts off with the Ravens and Chiefs. Chiefs laying 2.5 at home and minus 147 on the money line. Baltimore plus 125 for the road win on opening night, and plus 2.5 spread. But guys, before we go, let's get to the majors tonight. Let's put together a little 3-banger. And I got to tell you, the Royals, what a season they're having. I want to say we're like 15-1 to win the Central at the beginning of the season. I was just sitting there looking at, do we make can they possibly get a wild card, which was big plus money. They are one game back after their win last night. Bobby Witt Jr., the most exciting young player in baseball, hitting the winner, a homer in the 8th inning. The Royals are one back of the Guardians in Cleveland tonight and have a pretty nice pitching matchup to get to as well. Michael Lorenzen's on the bump for the Royals. He's 7-6 with a 3.47 ERA. But on the other side of it, it's Gavin Williams, who's 0-4 at home with an 8.66 ERA at home and has been roughed up big time in his last 2 starts and losses in 3 of the last 4. I think this is the night the Royals get a piece of first in the division. Now, depending on how you guys feel about it, we can take the plus money at plus 130 for Kansas City. Or if we want to be a little safer, death taxes and Bobby Witt hitting the over total bases. He's minus 125 to go over 1.5 bases tonight. So I'm considering one of those 2 plays for mine. Pat, what do you got for the triple play?
Well, if you want to go with a base prop, that's where I'm heading as well. And I'm going with Bryce Harper over 1.5 bases. This guy was 1 for 19, just an absolutely terrible slump. And then he went up against the Royals and came out of it. He exploded out of it. Went 4 for 13 with 3 runs, 3 doubles, and 2 RBI, and hit this over in all 3 of those games. One thing we know about Bryce Harper is that when he is hot, he gets hot. So I think he stays hot here. I think he gets over the 1.5 hits. Plus, he also is, you look at his splits from home to on the road, it's crazy. He rakes at home. So I really like him over 1.5 bases. I believe it's at plus 115. So we're getting plus money there as well.
Jake, what about you?
Yeah, Huss, listen, I'll be honest with you. I had the Royals on my card. They're one of those teams where I was thinking about going with, but I was a little nervous about the plus 130 juice. So I did switch off them, but I do like them tonight. I did switch off them. I'm taking the Diamondbacks, one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. They've won 6 in a row, and I just checked. They've won 19 of their last 24. Like, this team is hotter than ever. They're chasing a Dodgers team who's only leading the division by 3 games right now. So a team I'm absolutely on. They're 11 games over 500 at home, and they're at home tonight to the New York Mets, kicking off that series. It'll be a late night one, but it'll be a nice little sweat in the evening. So I like the Diamondbacks tonight as a slight home dog, -108.
Yeah, nice number too on that. So, all right, Jake, you got this. So we've got Diamondbacks money line. We got Bryce Harper over 1.5 total bases. And we've got Bobby Witt Jr. over 1.5 total bases. So let's get that up in the combo card. And if you want to ride with me just on the Royals outright, +130 to get a piece of first place in the AL Central. Who could have thunk it? But, Kansas City fans, man, first you get Mahomes and now Bobby Witt, and both of the guys are signed long-term. It's they've done a great job with it. Guys, great stuff today. Tomorrow, Dusty will be back. Patty will get ready for the Tour Championship. Always some interesting betting props when it comes to that. By the way, congratulations to our guy Pendy. He will be the lone Canadian taking part in the Tour Championship. He's in all the majors next year. Huge year for Taylor Pendrith. That's all coming up tomorrow. CFL on Monday, or on Thursday, I should say. And then more in the National Football League with some futures on Friday. For Jake Bolin, Moss, and Pat Gregoire, I'm Andrew Paterson. We'll turn it back to EST. Come and join me over at the top of the hour on Winnipeg Sports Talk for those of you in the Manitoba area. Have a good one, fellas.